This story is embedded in many stories, but I will say that this encounter came at a moment ripe in the theme of reconciliation in my life. And it was a week of many beloved people reaching out for support and reconciling with someone important to them. And I woke from a dream in the morning of this encounter, which was a dream of two people who I care deeply about in an important stage of transmuting the ancestral karma that they came to transmute through their relationship. And it was a difficult, high sensation, chaotic phase of the transmutation. But throughout the dream, I was aware of what was happening. And as I set out on the drive over the mountain, in between the two volcanoes, Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, driving home from delivering my friend to the airport, I had a call with a woman who I had met recently, who was sharing about the uncanny resemblance that I have to the father of her child with whom she is not reconciled, and the sacred synchronicities of certain moments of our encounters, which drew forth the next level of her healing process with this man, her reconciliation process. And it was such a dharmic conversation, such a beautiful meeting of authenticity and vulnerability and presence and acknowledging of what is. And when I completed that conversation, I just dropped into a mode of listening to the landscape as I drove across it, taking in the wonder and the beauty of the mountain. And I came towards a kipuka that I had driven by many times, that had called my attention many times, that I've always felt this draw towards. But I was always on my way somewhere with an agenda, and never had the spaciousness to really listen. But this time, well, I was in a little bit of a hurry in my mind, trying to meet somebody at a certain time. And so I thought to myself, well, I'll at least stop, and maybe I'll read the little board underneath the kipuka. Maybe I'll run up there real quick and get the view from up top. And so I was listening to this powerful invocation by a man named Astarius Miraculi called I Invoke and Dream Awake, as I pulled into this parking lot. And I sat there listening and crying and remembering, dreaming awake the dream of the complete transmutation and ascension of planet Earth in this now. Of all of the support, seen and unseen, all of the divine forces aligning at this time for us to do this sacred work of the transfiguration of our Mother Earth. And the complete transmutation of all of the ancestral karma that has prevented us from being together in a sacred way, in a beautiful, loving, co-creative and collaborative way on this planet with all of our brothers and sisters, human and non-human. And as as the prayer subsided and I was sitting in my car at the foot of this kipuka. And a kipuka is a geological structure. It's a hill that is on a mountainside, that's on a volcano, where there's been a lava flow that flows around this hill. It doesn't overwhelm it, it just flows around it. So you have this like hill with trees and life growing on it that's surrounded by a plain of lava. And this is a rather dramatic and steep, big kipuka, right in the center of Mama Hawaii, right in the middle, right in between the two peaks of Mauna Kea to the north and Mauna Loa to the south. And as I stopped, I heard the invitation from inside of me to sit with Hape. And it was a windy moment. And I thought to myself, do I bring the Hape up? Or do I do it here? And I heard very clearly, don't bring it up. Okay. And as I brought the Hape out, which is a South American tobacco-based snuff. It's a plant spirit medicine prepared by hand by the tribes. As I brought the Hape out, I felt some shame creeping in, because there's a part of me that has an addictive relationship with this medicine. And I paused, and I heard the words emerging from inside of me. Can you do this without shame? And I breathed, and I saw my own shame, the specter of my own shame, and the ways that I judge myself and make myself wrong, and the awareness of my transgressions and their impact. And I breathed, and I listened, and I settled. And I found a very clear path for me in this moment to receive the Hape medicine without shame, as a sacred act of communion, bringing this medicine to the foot of this beautiful kipuka, this being who called me here. And so I received the Hape. And in that experience, I saw the echo of shame in past, present, and future, and how the energy of shame produces a shameful way of being. It's not that we do something bad and then we have shame. It's that the energy, the shadow of shame, the deep sacred wound of shame infuses what we do and corrupts it. So I got out of the car. I put the Hape down, drank some water, and I started walking toward the mountain. Opened the gate, and I read the name of this kipuka that had called my name so many times. Pu'u Huluhulu, which means shaggy hill. And it is a shaggy hill in the midst of the bald, blackened plain of the saddle of these two volcanoes. This tall, proud, grassy hill with trees growing out of it, beautiful old gnarled trees. And my thought was, in my hurry, that I'll just run up and see the view real quick. And immediately I heard no. And then there was a patch of grass beside the trail. And so I knelt down in the patch of grass to regard this being. And I could feel in myself the part of me that was still feeling like I had a timeline. Even though I didn't actually need to be in the place where I was going at a certain time. I had quite a bit of space. And as I knelt down, I heard myself regard this being, Pu'u Huluhulu. And I heard myself say, please forgive me if I trespass. And immediately I was gripped. Immediately I was made aware that this has been the way that my ancestors have navigated the world. Asking for forgiveness instead of permission. And I heard a voice say, ask permission. Just ask. And this is like one of the keys to this whole story. Ask permission. Get consent. This is the key to undoing shame. When we're in a hurry, when we're feeling already ashamed like we don't belong. And so I bowed my head and I began to weep. And I heard the voice again inside my head. Can you do this without shame? And in order to do that without shame, I had to find my innocence again. I had to find my center again. I had to remember that my deepest core is completely without shame, utterly innocent, beautiful, and worthy. And then I regarded that being and I bowed my head and pressed it into the soil, into the grass. And I said, may I come up, grandfather? And in that moment, the sun, which had been shrouded behind the clouds, burst forth from the clouds. Just drenched me in warmth and light. The yes couldn't have been clearer. I thanked Pu'u Huluhulu. Thank you so much, grandfather. And I stood up and I began to walk toward the trail up. And I heard the kipuka speaking to me. And his presence was like a warm mana of pleasure in my body. When I would regard him and feel him, I could feel the warmth of his presence. I could feel the sturdiness. And he said, my children were without shame. The Hawaiian people, they didn't feel shame the way that you feel shame. Before you came, this was a land without the kind of shame that you know inside of yourself. But when you came here, you shamed them. You took advantage of their kindness. You fooled them. You stole what they had. And they utterly dominated them. They shamed them. And now they carry that shame. I heard that and I wept again. Felt so honored to be in conversation with this being, in communion with Pu'u Huluhulu. And I reflected on how, since I've been here, the short time that I've been here on this island, that one of the things I've encountered is that the Hawaiian people are very modest now, where once they would walk about barely clothed, they would surf naked, the women would bare their breasts. Now they're very modest. And in my community, in the alternative community here in Puna, we like to be naked on the beach. And there have been a few encounters where we have been shamed, where we've been made wrong for revealing our bodies. And I realized how that shaming of us comes as this projected shame from a people who never had shame, but see us and see shame. So I continued up the trail. And since being here on Hawaii and living off-grid, I've come to appreciate certain things. Come to appreciate the preciousness of water and what it means to have enough water, to capture the water that we need, to conserve the water that we have. And I've come to appreciate soil on this volcanic island that's constantly making new land. The lava is a rugged place for life. And as I walked up this trail, I heard, "Take off your sandals." And I obeyed. I took off my sandals and planted my feet in the dirt, in the soft dirt covered in the grass, in the golden grass dying and withering away, becoming more dirt. And I just felt this wave of gratitude and deep appreciation for the soil, for the softness, looking out over this plain of lava and this one little bastion of softness, of soil, of growth, of life. And I felt this incredible patience and perseverance of this kipuka, this being who sits in between these volcanoes. And I appreciated the thousands of years of growth and death that makes up this soil that my feet get to walk on in softness. And I wept again, just in utter gratitude. In gratitude for the soil, and in gratitude for what I've inherited, for all the things that have been invisible to me that I enjoy as grace, as a gift. And I appreciated and regarded this being's sense of perseverance and patience, and also this deep and innate sense that I got that of full surrender. Of, I'm here, I've made it this many thousands of years, but who knows? I may be overwhelmed tomorrow, and that's okay. This sense of like tenacity and being this space where life can grow, and this beautiful surrender. So as I walked up this hill, just receiving these transmissions, I just asked, I just want to be present right here. I'm listening. And so I got to the first fork in the trail. And I felt into the different possibilities and ended up with one of them. And so it was with every little fork in the trail until I ended up out in this bluff overlooking the sort of northwest. And these three trees, two big, old, gnarled trees, they look like some kind of an oak tree, sitting against the side of the hill. And one of them called me. And I had to walk through this tall grass, and I went to put on my sandals. and he was like, nope. Okay. So I walked barefoot, and of course it's soft and beautiful, and no problem. Walked down to this tree, this old gnarled tree with a sheen of this light green moss growing on it. And I go to sit down above the tree, and he's like, nope, come around front. So I came around to the front of the tree and sat down. And then I raised my hand to put my hand on the tree. And as I moved close to put my hand on the tree, I felt a magnet, like two magnets that don't have the same pole, like a little push, a subtle little push away. And I paused, and I heard, ask permission. So I breathed. May I touch you? I listened. And I did not hear a yes. And I was like, oh, I wanted to touch this tree. But I didn't hear a yes. So I put my hand down and I heard the voice again. Can you do this without shame? And I saw the ways that I had in my life heard no as something personal, as something against me. Which is why I've done things without asking permission, because I don't want to hear a no, because I don't want to feel rejected. But this no, I could feel the celebration of life in it. I honored this being's no, and I celebrated this being in its integrity. And I trusted this being to say no, and that no was a gift to me, to life. And so I sat there, weeping again, feeling unashamed of hearing this no, being able to celebrate it, and also feeling the echo of all the other times that I could not receive a no without shame, without some form of campaigning or trying to get what I wanted. And I just sat with that no. And then I turned my attention back toward the kipuka. And I felt his mana, his warmth and strength and solidity kind of pour back into my body. And he said, forgive your uncle. He's old and gnarled and tough. But he has a beautiful heart. And he has mysteries to teach to those who are patient. And so I just cried again, recognizing the truth of these words, recognizing the clarity. And I just listened toward the tree again. And I said, thank you, Uncle. Thank you for your no. And I asked him, is there anything that you have for me? I could just hear him. I could feel him smiling. This wry smile. As much as an old gnarled tree can smile, this tree smiled at me. And he looked at me like, you mean that wasn't enough? He said, "This is enough for now. Maybe you come back. Maybe we talk story." So I sat for a while, grateful, feeling the cool breeze wrapping around the mountain from the south, from the west. And I picked up my shoes and I turned around and I came back up to the bluff. And I turned my camera to take a photograph of these two trees, and somehow the framing didn't feel right. So I turned to this other tree and I snapped a photo. And then I turned back and I just heard, "Nope." And so I thanked my uncle and I didn't take a photo. And I recognized the gift. And I had a moment where shame might have crept in because I was about to do something without asking permission. But luckily grace stayed my hand. And I turned around and continued on my journey. And again, I just started walking and listening to my feet, listening to my body and which direction it wants to go at each of the junctures. Walking toward this grove of the same trees, but a whole forest of them, smaller ones. And I was thinking about the Hawaiian people. I was thinking about Uncle Sam, who is the inheritor of the mantle and responsibilities and position of Uncle Robert, who was like royalty down here. Closest thing we have to a king down here in Puna, of the Hawaiian people. And I was thinking about how to make it right, because my beloved and I and a small group of people are buying land here. And it's complicated. It's complicated to be a white person coming into this place and purchasing land. And we're here to do it in a good way. We put in an offer and it's been accepted. And this is in Uncle Sam's backyard. So we wanted to connect with him, let him know that we were intending on living here, ask his permission. And this whole narrative around shame, this whole theme of shame and the shaming and the body shame and all of these things were swirling in my mind. And I saw a vision. I saw a vision, and I wrote a script in my mind of a possible future in which my ohana and I humbly go to Uncle Sam and offer him a very precious gift. And I share some of this story about this encounter with Pu'u Huluhulu with him. And we make a humble request that he himself or somebody from his ohana can come on a regular basis and share the ways of the Hawaiian people, their language and their stories and their dances, the ways of this Aina and Aumakua, the spirits who are here and surround us and communicate with us, the birds and many beings, with us ignorant white people who have yet to learn the ways of this place. And the gift would be a symbolic gift. A beautiful statue that we have at Sundari. It's owned by John Shiva and Christine. And it's the statue of a woman who looks Hawaiian with a flower in her hair and a butterfly on her shoulder, and her breasts are bare. And originally they had intended to bring that statue to either Kahana or to Pohoiki and put that up as a gift to the Aina and to the Hawaiian people, to represent a girl who lived here and who was here before the Howleys came. But she was a prophetess, the prophetess of Puna, they called her. She predicted the coming of the Howleys. She was able to heal people and see the future. And she died when she was only 12 years old. But it's that innocence that statue would represent. And to share the heartbreak that we feel about the antagonism between the Hawaiian people and the Howleys, and our sincere desire to be of service in whatever way we can to the Hawaiian community and to the reconciliation and to the healing and making whole of what feels fragmented and broken. And, you know, who am I to do this? Who am I to do this? A stranger here, all brand new, just not even a whole year on this Aina. Can you do this without shame? Can you do this without shame? If this was my guidance, then who else am I going to wait for to do this? All I can do is see the script written inside of me and have the courage to take initiative, to ask for those who are involved in that unfolding to be my allies and collaborators in co-creating an experience, a moment in time, a ritual, a scene, all of these things at once. That is not a performance that is premeditated, but that is totally spontaneous and organic. That we bring our whole hearts to, and our sincere desires and all the gifts that we have accumulated within our beings to the task, to the simple task of an intention and an encounter that carries the frequency of humility and honesty and truth and reconciliation, and the possibility of restoring all of our innocence in the process. But the shadow would pull me down. My shame, my unworthiness of such a task, my self-doubt would pull me down and pull me away from even the smallest step. I could have hidden that story away inside of myself forever and died with it. But instead, I'm talking here and now, talking story. And I am talking to those who I would like to enroll And I went down to Uncle Robert's place and had a destined encounter with Uncle Sam, in which I humbly asked him if I could have an audience with him when I return from my travels in a month from now. And he was accommodating. And so things are in motion. But this whole idea, this whole frame that we're here to write a new script. We're here to write the script of a new heaven and a new earth. A new heaven and a new earth. We're here to write the scripts, but not just to write them, but to take initiative, to have the courage to gather our collaborators to us, to gather the ones who we will co-create with. And every script is just a draft. That draft is going to be added to in so many ways, and even when the basic script is set, it's all improv at the end of the day. And it's the current of life which will be the director, not any of us. The current of life moving through all of us, with each of us doing our own part, our own unique role in the beautiful unfolding comedy, drama, adventure, heroic tale that we're each here to live together. And I just felt in my body, in this encounter, in this slowing down, in this listening, in this asking permission. I felt the divine elements in my being, the masculine and feminine dancing together. The masculine having this idea and inviting the feminine of my body into an experience. The feminine of my body being a yes or a no. And I felt into the deep recesses of my body and consciousness. I felt the synarchy at work. I felt the wholeness. I felt the whole symphony of life working together. I fell into an effortless trust in the timing of everything, into the arrival and departure of everything, into the ideas and the opportunities and the moments, into this very breath. I felt the trust that within this commitment I have to being an instrument of healing and reconciliation in the transfiguration of Mother Earth, that I am being held and carried, and I'm in the full paradox of my radical free will and utter surrender into something so much bigger than any conception. So here we are, writing our scripts. Most of the scripts we write, most of the most beautiful scripts that we write, never see the light of day. We tuck them away in a journal somewhere. But it's time. It's time for each of us to step into our creatorship. Step into our dream of a new heaven and a new earth. And it's going to require each of us to do something that terrifies us, to do something that risks our name, something that we might be laughed at for doing, something we will surely be judged by some for doing. And yet here we are listening deep within ourselves for the new heaven and the new earth that is not coming at us from outside, but it is emerging from within us together. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your exquisite offering to this great turning, this new celebration of life on earth. Thank you for your courage, your creativity, and your willingness to surrender all of that into our collective greater yet to be.